Title 42 is officially over, and the huddled masses are coming to this country in droves. Whether or not they're going to be sticking around on the border states, or if they're going to be headed out to the northern states, some of them sanctuary cities, some of them not, we will find out. Plus some backlash coming to New York City for New York City shipping some of the migrants out into the suburbs, mostly the Republican-led ones. So we'll talk about all of that and a whole bunch more just on the immigration topic. That will be the majority of our show. But in other news, Biden and McCarthy spoke by phone ahead of the debt ceiling meeting. While we have some motion going on both sides, we don't have a deal yet, and tick-tock, time is running out. Daniel Penny, the person who is alleged to have murdered, or at least manslaughtered, Jordan Neely in New York, is officially charged and has surrendered himself. We'll go over some of what that means and why this is a very, very bad strategy for people who really just want to be law-abiding citizens. And Anderson Cooper, of all people, defends CNN's running of the Trump town hall. It is going to be all of this and more. I was the one flying the balloon. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. So I don't know what it is. Like, I know what's going on over here. The modem is outdated, and it's doing what I didn't realize that having an outdated modem would actually do. So that is going to be one of the updates that's coming up in the near future here, because we got to keep being able to stream. So we'll be doing that sometime in the very, very near future, bringing us back up to the current benchmark of the internet, because we are on setting 3.0 and we're supposed to be on 3.1. But again, I do need new equipment for that, so that's what's happening. But the weird part is that it always happens like right at 6. And I don't know if it's just because we went live and that just pushes the internet over the edge or whatnot, but yeah, I hit the live button at exactly 6 p.m. today. Like, exactly 6 p.m. And the first thing that I see as soon as I did was, okay, your stream is disconnected. Attempting to reconnect. We're actually, like, when I go back into my display over on the YouTube side, it's going to show 2 live streams that failed to start that are only a few seconds long, before we actually got one good and the monitors all showed green. Everything is showing green right now, so we're going to go with it here. There was, after I decided to take the live stream that was up and go, we did get a little bit of scuttlebutt over on the monitor side saying, you're dropping frames, you're doing this, you're doing that, but we're going to go for it because everything is showing excellent connection here, and we do have a lot to go over, and it's fish fry night, and I definitely want to go have myself some fish fry as well. So we're going to get to everything that we have going on over here on Contemporary, and there's a lot. The immigration front is really going to take over on what the Trump front was for the last few days, so we definitely need to pay attention to that. An interesting question that was raised before we get started here, before I even go through and sell the wares, an interesting question that was raised over on Twitter. Austin Peterson was the one that put it up, and he had asked what the economic outcome of the mass immigration is going to be, and somebody else had gotten there before me and said that there's going to be some inflation ticking up because there are more people chasing fewer goods or the same amount of goods, which means that they're going to have to raise the prices to keep them competitive. To which point I did point back out to Peterson and I said, okay, well, this other guy is right, but it's actually probably going to be more neutral, because remember, in spite of the fact that yes, we're going to have more people chasing the same goods, the same amount of goods, with all that illegal immigration labor that is way too afraid to go back and tell the government that they are not getting a full minimum wage, we are going to have labor costs drop. So this one might be a push. We will see what happens with that, and we'll be talking about that with immigration. And we'll do that right after finance. So let's get into it. Let's get started. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, and Clown World Chronicles, as we aim to bring you a better news experience from the common man for the common man. Stop getting your news from people who wear suits that cost more than your house. Get your news from people who are just like you. Let's get started. We're going to start, as we always do, with the Dow, looking at a full week of losses on the Dow. Although the last day of the week was barely a loss on this one. The Dow, the futures looked up at the start before dropping off throughout the day. Meanwhile, the trading started to claw its way back at the very end of the day, but just not quite enough to bring it back up over the previous close. The Dow closing at 33,300. 0.62 points. That is down 8.89 points, or 0.027%. So barely a loss, but still a loss all the same. So we will see what's happening with that. No layoffs report today, by the way. Some good news, finally. No layoffs report on what's we don't get to come back out and tell people that, hey, you're probably going to lose your job. Looking in at the Bitcoin price, the Bitcoin is at $26,770 US dollars and 20 US cents. That is down 234 US dollars and 70 US cents on the day, or 0.87% as we go. And it looks like, again, we had another day where it dropped off and took a big dive at the end before clawing its way back up. Just not quite enough to bring itself back up over the edge. So 26,770.20 is where we're landing at right now. We will see what happens with this over the weekend and see what happens on the short term. And your gas prices around Madison, as we look at the same chart we have been looking at for the last 3 years, comparing, contrasting, and seeing what the general trends are. Remember, these prices may not reflect your local prices. Always check your local listings, but do keep in mind that this will probably follow a trend that your local prices will stay somewhere in a relative amount of bounds too. So on the east and the west side, just as we've been seeing for the last few days, 340 with a little bit of raise coming up onto the isthmus. 324 is still where we're at with the Amoco, but 338 coming in and entering the isthmus from the other side. And by the way, if you do dare to drive downtown, which I do not recommend if you're in the Madison area, and you keep seeing a 340, 340, 340, and you don't want to pay 340, there is one little outlier sitting right here on, get the street name for you here, Atwood Avenue. That is at 304. I know where that is, actually, on Atwood, now that I'm thinking about that. Yeah, I've actually been to that gas station before. So they're at 304. If you want to go brave the inner city traffic, I don't recommend it. It sucks. I used to live not far from Madison, so I used to go there for big grocery shopping and things like that. And yeah, you do not want to brave that traffic over there. But that is what we see coming from the gas prices. Let's grab our sole finance article for the day. Let me get the main live chat up here. See if we can't get some people in here doing some chatter. Looks like all the live chats have married. on the main channel side, but on the alt side, of course, Rumble will not marry with that. But I will relay the messages back and forth between you guys as best as I can as we go. But looking in at Market Watch today, Dow Incorporated stock underperforms Friday when compared to competitors. From Market Watch Automation, which kind of makes me wonder if this is an AI that's starting to write this here. Shares of the Dow dropped 0.06% to 52.31 on Friday on what proved to be an all-around poor trading session for the stock market, with the S&P 500 index SPX falling 0.16 to 4124.08 and the Dow falling 0.03% to 33,362. This was the stock's 5th consecutive day of losses. So this is on Dow Incorporated, not necessarily the Dow Jones, but we'll talk a bit about what's happening there. Dow Incorporated closed 1807 short of its 52-week high, 70.38, which the company reached on May 18th. The stock underperformed when compared to some of its competitors Friday as Linde rose 0.9% to 370.33, and Air Products and Chemicals rose 0.52 to 278. So Dow Chemicals is underperforming, and as well as the rest of the markets here. We will see what happens with that on Monday. Let's talk immigration. And we're going to start with your host not being able to come back out and have an NBC article ready. Instead, we get to refresh this until they say, hey, I'll fix it next time. They might be getting sick of that over here. Come on. There we go. So this is live blog. What's next now that Title 42 has ended? From NBC News. El Paso official says Tess will be transporting people to their next destination, from Daniela Silva. A local official said the city hasn't seen a dramatic increase of migrants so far, but added that he will be looking to the city's ability to transport migrants to their next destinations as a way to assess any early impact of the policy change. I'm gauging that off our transportation operations. Mario D. Agostino, the deputy city manager for public health and safety in El Paso, told NBC News on Friday. He said El Paso aims to get migrants to the next destination within the next 24 to 72 hours. I'm going to move this here actually because this seems to be more in line with what's happening in New York. But today we are going to talk about migration a lot. So, starting off at the border today. From Politico, as the border heats up, Dems fracture over migration solution. From Daniela Diaz and Burgess Everett. Sherrod Brown is a stalwart progressive who doesn't often partner with the likes of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. On the hot button issue of immigration, though, the Ohio Democrat is siding with the caucus's two most famous centrists. As the Biden admin deals with the expiration of its own pandemic-era power to expel migrants at the southern border, Brown is signing on to a moderate proposal to extend that authority for 2 more years. On what authority? And mind you, again, with the economic impact of doing something like this, and political football of this, I'm in favor of doing this. But the problem with Title 42 is the fact that it draws its power and its authority based on a stated federal emergency, and the pandemic being the national emergency. That's what Title 42 officially draws its authority on. If you're not drawing your authority on something tangible, then it's just a ship them out, and that is not something that progressives are going to go with by any stretch of the imagination. Mind you, it is what our immigration policy should be, but this is going to cause a rift in the Democratic Party, I promise you. It's clear to me presidents of both parties have failed on this, and we need to send more resources to the border, Brown said in an interview. We need 2 more years to get this right. 10 years, a lifetime in Washington, have passed since every Senate Democrat linked arms to back comprehensive immigration reform. Now, as the COVID-related border restrictions expired overnight, the party is sharply divided on an issue that's at the forefront of the toughest Senate races in the country. In one camp, there's Manchin, Brown, Tester of Montana, and the Independent Cinema. All incumbents in red and purple states where border security fuels GOP attacks nearly every election cycle, which, by the way, is why progressive Sherrod Brown is on board with these other centrists and Republicans. It has nothing to do with his actual policy or what he actually stands by and believes in. It has everything to do with the fact of, crap, if this happens, my job is toast. While the Democrat Senate shows few signs of quick movement, they say immediate actions needed to deal with the influx of migrants expected at the U.S.-Mexico border as President Brandon warns of a chaotic transition from the expiring border policy. Then there are Senators Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico, Robert Menendez of New Jersey, Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, who, by the way, never has to deal with this in her home country, this is her home country, in her home state, and Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, who argue that the time for the admin's so-called Title 42 authority has come and gone. They aren't shy about smacking down their Democrat colleagues' proposals. Lujan went as far as to say, something that was put in place by previous administration by Stephen Miller, the hardline Trump advisor known for pushing immigration restrictions. He does not have a good track record of developing respectful programs for the treatment of anybody. Generally, anything that he touches is poison, said Lujan, who said he would oppose the centrist proposal but came up for a vote. And by the way, this is Lujan of New Mexico, who, if I'm not mistaken, is not up for re-election this year, but also is in a deep blue state that doesn't have to worry about that. Menendez, there's no chance that a Republican's going to win a statewide race in New Jersey. Hirono, same thing. And again, Hirono never has to deal with any of this in her home district. And Liz Warren, of course. Although Liz Warren is facing just a bit of heat in her race. I've got an article on that towards the tail end of the show. But these are all solid blue Democrats from solid blue states that never have to worry about re-election. They have safe seats. What's interesting about, and again, what I brought up with John Tester and Sherrod Brown is the fact that they don't. Lujan went as far as to call it something that was put in place by, let's see, I read that one. It all adds up to low expectations that the Senate Democrat majority can quickly bring anything to the floor to counter the House Republican border bill that passed narrowly on Thursday, which would hire and train 22,000 Border Patrol agents, because nothing says conservatism like expanding the federal government, and to finish the construction of the southern border wall. That's because Democrats are nowhere near consensus on how to handle sky-high border crossings of undocumented people. Across the spectrum, Democrats say they're aware of the political implications of Title 42 expiring and the humanitarian crisis likely to follow, but interviews with more than a dozen Democrat senators revealed mixed messages about any bipartisan solutions that could address the issue. Senate Judiciary Chair Dick Durbin said he plans to propose his own bill to address the expiration of Title 42, but his office hasn't released any details, and he was unsure Thursday about when he would introduce it. Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer is working with Durbin on that legislation. Well, I mean, that's a hardline take, Grant. Let me see if I can translate this down for YouTube standards. They just need to start to unalive people crossing illegally. They do it a few times and watch the crossings drop. What was the other one that they used to do that to? It was some class of criminal, and my cousin who thought that, he was that young Democrat who kind of grew up more conservative, but he was that young Democrat who had no problem saying something racist at the one time. But how to solve crime is just line up all the criminals and shoot every third one and hope the other two get the message. And then I would look back and say, Jason, I think that's just a little bit extreme, don't you? My cousin was an edgelord, by the way, before edgelording was cool. Which was basically because he was extremely uncool about it. Some are antsy for any action at all. This is ridiculous, Manchin said in an interview. I've signed on to the bill that I can sign on to, that I believe in. No, you signed on to the bill that gets you reelected. There's a difference. And I think there's a lot that needs to be done. Whatever moves, I'm happy. The tension within the Democrat Party may be boiling over, but it's been simmering for months. A year ago, a small bipartisan group introduced legislation that would have required a detailed plan for the administration if the border restrictions were lifted. Sinema, Manchin, and Tester, as well as Senators Maggie Hassan and Mark Kelly, endorsed that bill. And Seawall taking on the same direction here. They can't cross if they're vulture food. So, there is definitely some tension going on into this here. But it really starts to sound like a lot of Democrats are going to join on to this and say, hey, we can't do this. We can't let this happen like this. And this is going to be devastating for Democrat prospects in the Senate. Grant has also said, hey, calling out on my mistake too. Mazie Hirono can go back to her home country. Yeah, I guess this country is her home country. That was my bad. That was my bad. Freudian slip. Alright, let's grab one from Fox News. El Paso city leader warns immigration can't be a free-for-all. Calls for policy change as Title 42 ends. From Megan Myers. A city leader of El Paso is warning that migration into the city can't be a free-for-all and calling for policy changes in Washington, while saying that a last-minute block of the Biden admin's parole policy may have prevented a bigger surge in the area. Mario D'Agostino, deputy city manager for public health and safety, told Fox News Digital on Friday that it still feels like the calm before the storm after the Title 42 public health order expired on Thursday. We know that there are over 1,700, almost 1,800 apprehensions by Border Patrol in the El Paso sector yesterday alone. We know that their processing center is over capacity. There are well over 6,000 in custody at this point in time, and so those numbers will see a throughput. They'll be released, and so we'll be seeing those numbers coming throughout the weekend, he said. Daily migrant encounters had soared above the 10,000 mark, which blows my mind that they can actually even keep count on that statistically. Border-wide before the end of Title 42, but there are indications that numbers did not increase further. After the order ended later Thursday, it had been feared that there would be a new surge once the border, which allowed for the rapid expulsion of migrants at the border, ended, as migrants believe that they're more likely to be admitted to the U.S. D'Agostino says he believes the city, which had seen thousands of migrants camped out along the street earlier this week, after they came, shuffling back in after everyone cleared them out for Kamala Harris's photo op, had seen fewer migrants after a federal judge blocked the Biden admin from releasing migrants into the interior without a court date. In a late Thursday decision, Florida had sought temporary restraining order on the policy, and that was granted for 2 weeks by a federal judge. They did put a stay last night on the ruling where they couldn't do rapid paroles, D'Agostino said. The rapid paroles mean people are released a lot quicker than normal, and that's where it really burdens the city. So, with that going away, I think that's what we see. That's why we see it today with lesser numbers. I think that if it hadn't had a stay on that last night, we would be seeing a large influx right now of them decompressing their shelters. He said the population coming into the border towns like El Paso mostly wants to get away from the border to places like the East Coast, and will travel deeper into the interior. He said that there needs to be policy changes from Washington to deal with the surge of migrants coming across in such large numbers. So, It's coming. And again, like I asked yesterday, at what point do we stop calling this migration and start to say that this is an invasion? Like, you've got an organized group of people coming with the express intent to force their way into the country if necessary. 10,000 a day, too. I wonder how many of those are repeats. Like, hey, Pablo, get out of here. And the next day, hey, Pablo, I told you to get out of here yesterday. Hey, I'm not Pablo, I'm Juan. But you look like Pablo. And don't ask questions about that. Let me in. One that was brought to my attention from one Highleaf 11 from Newsweek. Shootout on the U.S.-Mexico border as people duck for cover. Video shows. Let me actually get a refresh on this so we can get the video. Seawall says the M2 Browning can be operated effectively by 2 men and has an effective range of a few thousand yards. A video of a firefight on a crossing between the U.S. and Mexico that forced people to hide behind cars has gone viral on social media. The footage shows an individual on a bridge ducking down behind a vehicle as loud bursts of continuous gunfire are heard. The clip has so far been viewed more than 1.5 million times since being posted on Wednesday evening on the Mexican news network ADN's Twitter page. Let's see if we can find that. Apparently not. Let's see if we can find... Oh, yeah, there it is, right there. So let's read a bit more of this. It was subsequently reposted by accounts including Intel Point Alert, which says that it reports major incidences as they occur throughout the United States. Intel Point Alert captioned the footage. Heavy gunfire reported at Far Reynosa International Bridge, which connects Texas and Tamaulipas, Mexico. A follow-up tweet said that several people have been reportedly shot, and there are unconfirmed reports that there have been at least 3 fatalities. ADN 40 said the shooting occurred between elements of the army and armed civilians, and that 3 alleged criminals were killed. Okay, but then the question is, number 1, this goes past the idea of the peaceful migrants, number 1. That shreds a lot of that. But number 2, my big question here is, who's doing the shooting? Is it people that are coming as migrants who are just that eager to get in? Is it the cartels that want to make sure their product get across? They just say civilians in this article. The shooting started at around 1500 on Wednesday, and the 3 people who allegedly died were involved in the gunfight. Newsweek has not been able to independently verify these claims. It's because they're in a shallow grave somewhere and the military is not going to comment on it. Newsweek was told by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection that they were checking the viral video. They later came back and told Newsweek to reach out to the government of Mexico regarding this incident. Let's watch. So, from what I can gather just from listening out to the sounds of here, this is most likely... the automatics are most likely coming from our side because they're being done in burst fire, not a continuous full auto stream. I don't know necessarily if the armaments that the cartels would have burst capability, but I know that they'll have full auto with that. Or if this is, again, just armed citizens who are trying to get their way across, who are using a semi-auto over there. But I don't see anything at all, but I don't hear any continuous auto fire. I guess there is a little bit of fire over there. Yeah, there was a little bit of muzzle flash there, but not really anything where you can see what's going on. So they're intent to get here one way or the other. A bit of a funny reaction to what we have going on here. Migrant bus arrives at Kamala Harris's doorstep hours before the end of Title 42. From Victor Nava. A busload of migrants from Texas arrived at Vice President Harris's residence in D.C. on Thursday, hours before the Title 42 was set to expire. That is the Naval Observatory again, by the way. More than 30 migrants, men, women, and children, most from Venezuela, were dropped off outside the U.S. Naval Observatory, which hosts the official residence of the Vice President, according to NBC News. The outlet reports the bus was the second to arrive at the Naval Observatory in less than 24 hours, the first vehicle dropping off almost 40 individuals. Texas has been busy busing migrants to Harris's house and other liberal enclaves since last year in an effort to demonstrate the challenge the border states face due to the immigration crisis and dispute the Biden admin's claims that the border is secure. The district's Department of Human Services announced last week that DC's temporary lodging program had reached capacity with about 1,249 migrants from 370 families spread across 3 area hotels. Okay, and my question here is that's all well and good, and I understand where you guys are coming to capacity off of this. But the reality that we're seeing here that nobody wants to acknowledge is the fact that the border towns in Texas, Donna and El Paso and places like that, are also at capacity and have been for a lot longer than you have. I don't begrudge you the fact that you're at capacity. I don't. And that some of this is going to be hard on your infrastructure. But what I begrudge of you is the fact that you expect this challenge to everybody else's infrastructure to stay in place. The buses arrived just hours before the end of the pandemic-era Title 42 immigration policy, which allowed law enforcement authorities to quickly expel migrants without granting them an asylum hearing. President Biden acknowledged Tuesday that with the end of Title 42, the U.S. border with Mexico will be chaotic for a while. I do have one question on this, by the way. MK is here. Finally caught contemporary. Thank you, MK. And this actually I don't know the answer to, but is the Naval Observatory, is that officially classed as a government building? See, my first thought would have been, if you're going to start busing people, migrants, to DC to demonstrate the fact that this is going on, I would bus them and drop them off at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, where the president can ignore them. He can throw them in a bunker. But I also know that the Capitol Police and the National Mall Police would probably take some excessive... They would have a reason to turn it away from there. What is the address for Congress? Oh, it just gives me if you put in U.S. Capitol address, all it gives you is Washington, D.C. and the zip code. Apparently they don't want people mailing things to the Capitol or something. Does it even have a street address? Yes, everybody knows it's on the eastern end of the National Mall. Especially everybody who's played Fallout 3. But from playing Fallout 3, I know that there are 3 cross streets that go around it. But that would be the other place that I would drop them, would be right in front of the Capitol building and say, hey, Ignore this. The buses arrived just hours before the end of the pandemic-era Title 42 immigration policy, which allowed law enforcement authorities to quickly expel migrants without granting them an asylum hearing. President Biden acknowledged Tuesday that with the end of Title 42, the U.S.-Mexico border will be chaotic for a while. Because of the expected surge in border crossers, vetted migrants who cannot be processed by overburdened border authorities will be allowed to enter the country. The Post found that some asylum seekers are already being allowed to enter the country and being given immigration court dates more than a decade away. Yeah, that's one of the other problems here is we just don't have the court infrastructure to process these people quickly. So, but that's a nice place to put them, is right in front of the Naval Observatory. Hey, Kamala! You said no human is illegal. Let us in. We want food. Got one from the Daily Wire. Report Biden DHS coordinating with illegal migration with Mexican law enforcement from Tim Pierce. The U.S. Border Patrol has reportedly partnered with Mexican immigration officials to facilitate the orderly migration of hundreds of illegal immigrants into the U.S. Border agents are communicating across the U.S.-Mexico border with Mexican authorities on encrypted messaging platforms to facilitate crowds of migrants entering the U.S., according to Mexican officials. The U.S. officials have set up the controlled flow system to keep Border Patrol processing centers from being overwhelmed, Mexican law enforcement told the Center for Immigration Studies. Border operations run by the Department of Homeland Security are being overrun as Title 42 lapses. The policy officially expired just before midnight on Thursday to combat the historic surge in migration. The Biden admin has reportedly resorted to unusual and drastic measures. Controlled flow by the Biden admin's DHS with Mexico also constitutes a highly unusual U.S. policy that demonstrates formal acquiescence to illegal immigration and an official willingness to accommodate mass illegal immigration rather than stopping, blocking, or deterring it as required by law, CIS reported. The strategy has led to some conflict between federal law enforcement and the Texas Tactical Border Force, a special border response team of National Guardsmen authorized by Greg Abbott, according to CIS's Todd Bensman. Todd Bensman also tweets out, looks like a long Mexican standoff between Texas and the Biden DHS, which has been orchestrating immigrant swims in for 2 weeks now, according to the exclusive CIS org reporting. Let's watch. Why are they putting a fence up? Especially one that's that low. And yes, I've operated a post driver like that too. Abbott's office said the reported coordination between DHS and Mexican law enforcement was effectively laying out a welcome mat for illegal immigrants. President Biden is actively undermining his own border patrol and refusing to allow them to act as law enforcement to secure our border. Abbott spokesman Andrew Mahaleris told the Daily Wire in a statement. While Texas is taking unprecedented action to respond to the crisis, President Biden is laying out the welcome mat for illegal immigrants by embracing even more open border policies like these and facilitating this record level of illegal immigration rather than deterring and repelling. Right, but, when the court date is a decade out, it's somebody else's problem at that point. Let's see how Florida's responding to this one, because I know a lot of people are watching Ron DeSantis with eager eyes. Let's get back up on the Rumble side here. Oh look, I did it again. There we go. Ron DeSantis signs immigration crackdown as Biden prepares to end Title 42. From Matt Dixon. Ron DeSantis signed a sweeping immigration overhaul bill on Wednesday, a move that comes weeks ahead of an anticipated run for president, and just a day before President Biden's administration plans to end Title 42, a pandemic-era immigration policy that makes it easier to expel migrants. DeSantis has long used immigration to attack Biden, with whom he has openly sparred for nearly 2 years, as his national ambitions have risen. Look, we're bracing for some turbulent times ahead, DeSantis said Wednesday. When you have a president that's turned a blind eye to the border, when you have that, you're likely to see a lot of it get worse. Some provisions in the Florida bill. Banning local governments from issuing ID cards for people who cannot prove citizenship. So basically taking the opposite stance of places like Illinois and California. Requiring hospitals that accept Medicaid to include a question on intake forms about the patient's citizenship status. Banning undocumented law school graduates from being admitted to the Florida bar. Increasing penalties for human trafficking related offenses. By the way, if you have gone to the full extent of getting all the way through law school, which means you have a grasp of the law, and you haven't changed things over and done things legally, that's a you problem. I'm sympathetic to the fact that you want to come in here and actually do something good for our country, but I'm going to say right off the bat, with you actually having a grasp of the law and the ability to change and manipulate it, if you haven't got your affairs in order yet, that's on you. Increasing penalties for human trafficking related offenses. Beefing up the required use of E-Verify. The federal government's overreach of privacy, a federal database employers can use to check a worker's employment eligibility. No, that's not what E-Verify is. E-Verify is another way for the government to come back out and track the legal people on where they're working. Because the illegal people who are working under the table don't fill out the E-Verify forms. And again, that is a position where Ron DeSantis and I differ very heavily. There are a lot of those positions, by the way. I'm not a fan of Ron DeSantis, Governor Executive Order, as I call him. But his twisted way to go back and depend on E-Verify, which is nothing but a government record keeping of the people who are actually legal, not something where like the Democrats' buddies who are looking for slaves, they're not going to use E-Verify. It's just like gun ownership. We're going to make it harder to get a gun. We're going to make it illegal so that you can't have this gun. Okay, well, all you're going to affect is the law-abiding citizens. Because the criminals already broke the law to get a gun. DeSantis has acknowledged that immigration policy is set at the federal level, and Florida's role is limited, but he has an intense focus on trying to remove incentives migrants might have to come to Florida. Well, look, people are going to come if they get benefits. You're either here as a native or come here legally. Both fine things. But to come across the border and end up getting benefits in Florida does not make sense. DeSantis is picking Wednesday to sign a bill focused on immigration. An issue he's spent significant state resources on is likely no accident. So, that's what they're doing down in Florida. We got some reaction to this from ABC Action News, WFTS out of Tampa. Floridians react to state's strict new immigration law. From Keely McCormick. Floridians are reacting to the state's strict new immigration law. It cracks down on hiring undocumented workers and strengthens the governor's migrant relocation program. Eliseo Santana works as an advocate in the Hispanic community here in Tampa. He said he's talked to several people since the bill was signed into law, and both documented and undocumented people are scared. I'm a pillar of the community. The majority of Hispanics in Pinellas County are that way, and yet by passing that law, wherever I go to get any kind of service from anyone, they are looking at me as if I'm undocumented, Santana said. He thinks the law will drive a wedge between the people in Tampa Bay area. Santana is also a veteran and former law enforcement officer. He said he thinks the new law is going to negatively impact all people of color. My conversation with anybody is not, are you documented? I mean, that's not it. But now this law makes it a priority for all of us. It's not just law enforcement, not just immigration people, but all of us have to put that barrier to have that prejudice, Santana said. People like Nikki Jones are in favor of the bill. Jones is a mother of two who lost her husband when he was in a crash caused by a driver who was undocumented a few years ago. DeSantis brought Jones to the signing on Wednesday because, well, DeSantis does everything for a political prop. It's one of the other things I don't like about him. I'm in complete support of this immigration bill, said Jones. It's a start to protecting our families and our children. These laws are some of the strictest immigration laws the country has ever seen. The new law requires hospitals that take Medicaid to ask about the patient's citizenship status. Businesses with 25 or more employees will be required to e-verify employment screenings and tougher penalties for knowingly hiring or transporting undocumented people into the state. You want to bet? Well, they'll be required to by law, but they're not going to. Additionally, the Florida Migrant Relocation Program will get another $12 million after previously flying almost 50 undocumented people from Texas to Martha's Vineyard. Not a huge fan of that either, by the way. Like, let Abbott clean up his own mess. If there had been 50 people in Florida who were illegal migrants that got shipped on DeSantis' dime, I'd be more in favor of that. It was still funny, don't get me wrong. It was still hilarious to watch, but let Greg deal with his own problems, and he's doing a fine job of that too. At least if you're going to put it on the Florida taxpayer dime. If you're pulling it out of your own pocket, I don't give a damn what you do with it. If you're pulling that out for your own salary, have at it. Republican lawmakers previously said they believe the immigration package will act as a deterrent to the migrant influx. Santana said he thinks it's instilling fear to scare migrants away from coming to Florida. I would say that both of those lines are true, actually. That is not the republic for which I served as a veteran, and that represents liberty and justice for all, and that application for all is not happening, Santana said. So, those are the opponents. There's only a couple of them. I would like to see possibly a broader poll of Floridians on this one. Let's talk New York, because that seems to be where the controversy is coming from, is New York. From ABC 7 Eyewitness News out of New York City. New York City braces for an influx of migrants as Title 42 expires. No author given. New York City officials are bracing for the arrival of more migrants, and Mayor Eric Adams is pleading for help as he looks to places to house new arrivals. The number of migrants trying to enter the U.S. could dramatically increase after Thursday night's expiration of Title 42, and that is sparking concern in the tri-state area. Officials have said hundreds of migrants per day could start arriving in New York on Friday, straining the already overburdened shelter system. And indeed, as if on cue, 2 more buses of asylum seekers did arrive at the Port Authority bus terminal in Midtown shortly after dawn. Public advocate Jumaine Williams and others were on hand to greet them and help them get assistance as Williams called for a better response at all levels of government. We have a responsibility, he said. I understand the angst because I have it as well, but we have to coordinate this city, state, and federal level, and right now that's not happening. He asked President Biden to step up and to not ignore New York City. We can't handle this on our own. Kathy Hochul also called on Biden Friday to mobilize the federal government to provide shelter for migrants arriving in New York City. She's asking the Biden admin to identify federal land to house asylum seekers like spaces on military installations, including naval resources in and around the Northeast. But see, in and around the Northeast on naval bases is not a sanctuary city. New York City is a sanctuary city. Hochul specifically asked to use a portion of Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn, which is federally owned and part of the National Park Service under the Gateway National Recreation Area. With Title 42 officially rescinded and the anticipated weeks-long construction process it would take to construct temporary shelters, I asked for this request to be granted immediately, she said. According to volunteers, the latest buses to arrive in New York City on Friday came from Laredo, Texas. Many of the asylum seekers made the journey from places like Venezuela, Ecuador, and Colombia. As the city faces strain on its resources, including its shelter system, one of the biggest challenges is to where to house the incoming migrants. It is unclear where the group that arrived on Friday will be headed next. There have been heated conversations between Eric Adams and county executives in Rockland and Orange counties about where to house them, but part of Adams' plan is to relocate migrants to the Hudson Valley, in mostly conservative towns, by the way. And on Thursday, 2 buses showed up at a hotel in Newburgh, Orange County. A third one arrived on Thursday night, which is what we're going to lead into specifically. I remind you, Eric Adams, when you came into office, one of the first things that you said was that the Trump immigration system is horrible, it's anti-humanitarian, and New York would always be a sanctuary city. Like I said earlier on in the stream, I don't begrudge the fact that you're having problems trying to house these people that you've advocated for years to come in and be a part of the United States, as long as they're not coming to your cities. I don't begrudge the fact that you're having problems, but the point of seeing some of this, number one, is the fact that you said, open arms, come in, we've got a sanctuary city, come on in. But the other point of this is showing you that this is hard on other communities. This is absolutely devastating to other communities who don't have the resources and the high social safety net that you have in New York City. And I would hope, by the way, that seeing something like this would actually have some clout, and maybe we could see a change of opinion on what we do about immigration policy in this country. I don't believe it will. In fact, they'll just keep saying evil Republican over and over again. But honestly, my hope is that this pushes some of these Democrats, these open border Democrats, to get kicked to the curb. So we can actually make a legal process to do this and get more people on it. Kick out the chaff who wouldn't pass the legal process, and let the people who are actually serious about improving their lives and improving our lives as well get onto the path and get here. From Fox News, New York City Mayor Adams plans buses. That's not a verb. New York City Mayor Adams plan. That's a noun. Buses migrants pass county with immigration protection law to Republican-led counties. From Michael Lee. New York City Mayor Eric Adams' plan to move several hundred illegal migrants to hotels in Orange and Rockland counties began Thursday in a move that buses asylum seekers past a sanctuary county to areas that have fiercely resisted the plan. County and local leaders in Orange and Rockland counties have pushed back against Adams' plan to send over 300 migrants to the Armani Inn and Suites Hotel in Orangeburg in Rockland and the Crossroads Hotel in Newburgh in Orange, the latter of which saw migrants arrive on Thursday. Supporters were seen outside the Crossroads holding signs welcoming them. Orange County Legislator Kevin Darian Lujan said outside the hotel that 20 to 30 people had arrived in the first busload, and about 60 were expected on Thursday, all males. "We stand in full solidarity with the asylum seekers," he said. Orange County's neighbor, Rockland County, successfully obtained a temporary restraining order from the state Supreme Court on Tuesday after arguing that the move violated local zoning regulations. As the battle rages over where to house the migrants that have taxed New York City's facilities to the breaking point, Adams has argued the rest of the state must step in to help alleviate the burden faced by its largest city. Why? Why? Can you explain to me why they must step in? And why what you say about it should have any weight? Now, it's a different story if it's Kathy Hochul. I would still ask the question as to why, but this is somebody who actually oversees the entire state. Not just the person who is tasked with the responsibility of one city. New York City has cared for more than 61,000 migrants, sheltering, feeding, and caring for them. "We've done so largely without incident," the spokesperson told Fox News Digital earlier this week. "We need the federal government to step up, but until they do, we need other elected officials around the state and country to do their part and emulate the humane and compassionate approach New York City has taken over the past year." Humane? I mean, you've complained about it from day one. From literally the first day that this started happening, you've been saying that this is nothing but evil Republicans using human beings as pawns. You have not been compassionate and humane about this. But the plan to bus over 300 people to Rockland County from New York City would take the migrants past nearby Westchester County, which in 2018 passed legislation to prohibit the use of any of its resources to assist federal law enforcement investigations based on a person's nation of origin, i.e. Sanctuary County. But see, the rich donors live in Westchester County. That's where Alex from the Bronx is from, originally. The legislation, called the Immigrant Protection Act, was not designed to be a sanctuary law. Westchester County Executive George Latimer, yes it was, argued at the time, despite the measure facing pushback from ICE enforcement. If any illegal immigrant comes here, we're not going to let the federal agency come in here and investigate that person. What does that sound like to you? That sounds like a sanctuary to me. Buses did begin arriving Thursday to nearby Newburgh, New York, which is situated in Orange County, just north of Rockland and Westchester counties. Those migrants will be housed at the Crossroads Hotel, where migrants were greeted by supporters holding signs as the bus pulled up. We are here as supporters of human dignity and want to make sure the people coming here know that there are people in Orange County, the city of Newburgh, town of Newburgh, and beyond that have their back, who are supportive, and that want to welcome them, Lujan said from outside the hotel, according to a report from the Times-Union. So, and some of this does seem to be a bit strategic. Now, of course, obviously, illegal immigrants can't vote. Honk honk. But, I mean, when it came down to illegal immigration, the plan has always seemed to, and I mean, this goes long past before Biden, before Trump, before Obama. I mean, I've seen stuff like this in the Bush years and even in the Clinton years, where the plan is to get the border open and then get all the migrants to settle in the more conservative areas, which is, I mean, coming especially from the 90s has come with some mixed results and mixed effects, especially now that we get down into third and fourth generations of people who are actually legal because they were born here, who are looking at this, starting to form businesses, become hard workers, and starting to look at some of this stuff where people are saying, hey, you have to vote Democrat just because of the color of your skin, otherwise the evil Republicans will deport you. And they say, hey, my name's Terry. I was born in Milwaukee. What are you talking about? Get out of here, you racist. Honestly, I think if New York is having trouble, then Kathy Hochul should start putting the initiative out to the smaller communities around New York State, especially like Albany, Rochester, Buffalo, looking at you, and start to raise the question of, hey, can you help New York City? Can you step up and provide facilities? Who wants to be a volunteer before we start pushing this on people who aren't volunteers? I think some of those communities would step up. What else do we have here? Axios, first buses carrying migrants from New York City arrive in New York suburb. We won't go too far into this one. Buses carrying migrants from New York City arrived in the nearby suburb on Thursday, marking the start of the new effort by Eric Adams to send migrant families elsewhere ahead of the expected influx of new arrivals. No, this is pretty much the same story that we just read before. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about some of the pushback from Politico. Suburban New York hotel's latest symbol of immigration divide. From Caitlin Cordero. 3 miles from the nearest supermarket on an isolated street near Stewart Airport in Newburgh, several male asylum seekers sat out in the sun mingling with news reporters from all over the world. The calm scene on Friday was periodically interrupted by drivers honking and yelling out expletives to anyone who would listen. Others from the community stopped to drop off donations. Like the country, the Hudson Valley community is divided on New York City's decision to send 3 buses of male asylum seekers to the area this week. The Crossroads Hotel in the town of Newburgh may be physically hidden from the nearby main road, but it's now at the forefront of the country's contentious debate surrounding what to do with the thousands of migrants crossing the southern border every day. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has made it clear his admin is struggling to provide housing, food, and other services for more than 6,500 asylum seekers that entered the city this past year, and with federal border policy expired, it is not prepared to deal with the thousands more that are expected to come. But this move to alleviate the strain on the city has angered Republican leaders in the Hudson Valley, creating a new political divide in the battleground region of the state and the nation. Rockland and Orange have taken legal actions to bar hotels from accepting asylum seekers. The town of Orangetown in Rockland has been successful thus far through restraining orders that the city is appealing, but the Newburgh has not taken legal action, and the group of men were welcomed by local Democratic leaders and community organizations. I mean, is the Beanie Boy going to be right about this? Is this going to go to civil war? Civil war, I say! Go to timcast.com and subscribe. I promise it won't go to Vice. And while they don't speak the language, the migrants inside the hotel were aware of the debate surrounding their arrival. Felipe Cortez of Ecuador says he understands the locals fear having people they don't know in their town, but said they're not looking to take anything from anyone, they're just looking for work. We have to be calm because people have the ideas of who we are, but they don't know us. Simply, if they got to know us and see what each person is made of, they will change the mentality that they have, Cortez said in Spanish. I respect some of this here. Because remember, I just migrated myself. I mean, 2.5 hours, but still, I just migrated myself looking for work. Like, that just happened. But I'm going to say, Felipe, if you want to make the first step into reaching out to your community, the people around you, and trying to get them to welcome you with open arms, I would start by learning the language, so they can communicate with you effectively. But we don't have an official language in this country. No, but the vast majority of us speak one language. The vast majority of us speak one language. So in order to have those effective conversations, when in Rome, Cortez left his wife and 3 daughters and his siblings at home to pave the way for a better life for them in the U.S. He's arrived in New York with the help of a refugee center in Texas. They provided him with a ticket for a flight. When he arrived in New York, he connected with another refugee center that told him about the program to move to the Hudson Valley. When asked if he thought the mayor sent the men for political reasons, he said they were sent because they believe they can contribute to the manpower in the area. Many of them are laborers, some in construction, welders, operators of heavy machinery. We are looking for work, and I think they were focused on that, and that's why they sent us to this place, so that we can contribute here, because there are many of us, he said. This will be an interesting debate too, by the way, because this is going to, especially when we come into public policy aspect of this, when this does start to get discussed, this is going to push to the head of the fact that a lot of people, because of pandemic era work habits, have refused to take a lot of the jobs that have been sitting open for years and years on end. And now, like Cortez says, this is somebody who, if we take him at his face value, is legitimately looking for work. There are people who are looking for workers. He's looking for work. But the only issue here that I have, again, is the fact that he's in a position where he can be taken advantage of, and for his sake, he can't go back and seek help for it, and for the sake of the people who might come up afterwards and say, hey, I guess I really need that job after that, he's devalued the value of that job so much, because they can pay him $5 an hour under the table, and any American who's going to take that job is going to want $30 taxed and documented. $30 an hour taxed and documented. So this does go this is detrimental in many directions. I'm not, a lot of my friends are hardline, no immigration ever. But those are my same friends who say the 14 words. I am not a hardline anti-immigration person. But I do want there to be a process so people can get in and not only get the protections of the laws that we unfortunately have to have in order to have commerce here, so they can get the protections of those laws, but also so they can't be taken advantage of, and again, so they can get themselves a decent wage off of this and keep the competition going for these jobs. Instead of a restaurant owner coming out here saying, hey, I'm not even going to hire kids for dishwashers anymore because they all want minimum wage, and they all want their minimum wage to be $15 an hour. I can hire a staff of illegal immigrants and get 17 of them for what I would pay one high school kid. And if you think restaurateurs don't do that, you're deluding yourself. And my hope also, by the way, is if they do go through the legal channels, that they have the appreciation for the culture that they're coming into. The Hispanic people that I know are based, extremely based. They're very Catholic. Which would, on most points make them natural allies with my friends who are hardline anti-immigration. All right, Eric Adams pushing back against this from NBC4 New York. Racist and anti-Semitic, New York City Mayor rails against Rockland County official amid migrant crisis from Melissa Russo, Sarah Walls, Jennifer Vasquez, and NBC New York staff. Eric Adams referred to the Rockland County executive, Ed Day, as racist and anti-Semitic on Thursday, comparing him to the Texas Governor Greg Abbott, amid the ongoing battle over plans to house asylum seekers in the Hudson Valley. This latest development comes as sheriff's officers were posted outside the Armani Hotel in the Rockland County town of Orangeburg a day earlier, where a temporary restraining order is in place barring migrants from moving in. New York City was looking to send a couple hundred migrants to the northern suburbs at what the mayor's staff would be an emergency use hotel, but Rockland officials say that it simply would be subterfuge for an illegal city-run shelter. This is a renegade operation on the part of the mayor, and I cannot even begin to believe what's going on at this point, Day said on Wednesday. I have never seen such bullying and arrogance in my entire career. On Wednesday, the mayor's press secretary responded by saying, quote, "We will allow the hotel to decide how to move forward in Rockland County, but our plan is still to move a small number of asylum seekers to Orange County, barring any security issues." However, on Thursday, the mayor had harsher words for Day. So when you look at County Executive Day, this guy has a record for being anti-Semitic, racist comments. His thoughts on how he responded to this really shows a lack of leadership. I thought that he was Texas governor the way that he acted, Adams said. What's wrong with Abbott? Abbott is doing the best that he can in the policies that you advocated for. In response, Day said that Adams can call me every name in the book to deflect the reality of this former officer's clear disregard for our laws. Between his actions underscoring his belief that he is above local and state law, his disregard for state emergencies, and the ongoing deception to the state of New York, Rockland County, and most recently Orange County, which was blindsided Thursday morning after being told by Adams that they were holding off their plan, speaks volumes about the character of Mayor Adams. Day's response went on to say, "I'll do whatever is necessary to safeguard the lives involved that this plan will, without question, endanger." The blindsiding that Day mentioned referred to what occurred Thursday morning when New York City put its controversial plan to relocate migrants to the suburbs into action. 2 buses filled with asylum seekers arrived at the Crossroads Hotel in Newburgh despite the state of emergency in place there and in Rockland County. So we got ourselves a little bit of a fight going on. And the last thing that we have in this region of the country comes to us from the Daily Wire. Watch college students boo and turn their back on Eric Adams during commencement speech. So this may not have entirely anything to do with immigration, but it is telling us that this wonderfully popular governor that everybody was supposed to like may not be as popular as people think. From Leaf LeMahieu. Graduates from City University of New York School of Law turned their backs and yelled as New York City Mayor Eric Adams delivered the school's 2023 commencement address. The heckling followed a protest over the proposed budget cuts to the school by Adams and criticisms over his response to the death of Jordan Neely. Students interrupted, yelled, and booed during Adams' remarks, which occurred during a Friday graduation ceremony at the Colden Auditorium of Queens. For 22 years of my life, I wore a bulletproof vest and protected the children and families of this city as a police officer. So I know what it is. I know what it takes to hold the city together, Adams said during his speech. We have a lot of challenges, a lot of things that it needs discipline. And just as you see these graduates here, I know what it is to protest. Let's watch.
Some of them are going to craft policies on health care. Some of them are going to work with elected officials to determine legislation. Some of them are going to move on and even fill the role of what it is to be a public figure. Let's be clear. For 22 years of my life, I wore a bulletproof vest and protected the children and families of this city as a police officer. So I know what it is. I know what it takes to hold this city together. And we have a lot of challenges, a lot of things that it needs discipline. And just as you see these graduates here, I know what it is to protest. I protested with Amadou Diallo. I protested with Zongo. I protested as 100 blacks in law enforcement who care. I protested to stand up for things to right. But I'm not the mayor because I know how to protest. I'm the mayor because I know how to speak on behalf of the countless number of people in this city. And my message today to the graduates, my message to those who believe that their beliefs are the only beliefs in a diversified city like New York, my message to you, instead of being a detached spectator in a full contact sport called life, get on the field and participate about improving the lives of the people of this city, something that I will continue to do and encourage the graduates to do. These are exciting times, CUNY grads. These are exciting times. And we know we can move this city forward as we deal with the issues around immigration, the issues around public safety, the issues around how do we build a better city for all. And so I look forward to the future of these graduates that are here today. And those of you who are here, sitting here, celebrating this amazing journey, I thank you. I thank you for what you have accomplished.
Man, Adams can't catch a break. Because, I mean, basically from what they're describing here, this is a far, far left group that's protesting him. So he's pissed off the far left. He's pissed off the right. He's pissed off the far right by existing. I'm kind of surprised that these migrants didn't have their hands up in the X on their chest while they had their backs turned. Although that may be a Klingon ritual, and I'm just that geeky that I remember that. Alright, that is our segment on immigration in New York. Let's talk about the debt ceiling. Tick-tock, tick-tock, it's coming. From CNN. Still no plan to avoid a default, but major shifts in posture from Lauren Fox. After a week of meetings on the debt ceiling, Congress, the White House, and the country still do not have a clear path forward to avoid a cataclysmic default, with just 4 days, when both the House and Senate are scheduled to be in session before June 1st, when the U.S. could default on its obligations on one hand. It looks like this could go to the brink on the other. There have been pockets of progress over the intervening days and signs that some of the most stringent and hardened positions negotiators have been echoing over the past 3 months are slowly beginning to soften. After meeting Friday for a third straight day, House, Senate, and White House negotiators still don't have a deal, but are expected to continue to talk over the weekend, according to a source familiar with the matter. 2 sources involved with the talks said there's been progress, but there's a long way to go. One source said it takes months to hammer out a fiscal deal, but they're trying to do that in just a matter of days. Yeah, that's part of the reason why we didn't hear about this when we had more Trump news and Ukraine news and documents news and Biden news and everything else, was to distract from this, so this could be a down to the wire. So we wouldn't be having these conversations because, yeah, as they said, this is something that takes months to do when you're sitting in a situation like this. But people didn't start talking about it again. I mean, we hit the debt limit in January. It is now May 12th. And between January and the end of April, there was not even an inkling of a discussion of what was happening with this. when that should have been the time that this stuff was getting hammered out. But now, with the deadline being up here, we're more into the situation of, hey, Republicans, you're going to lose your seats if you don't cave to this, so just cave. You've only got a couple days left. And yes, the strategy was to put the fire under the asses to do that, to force the issue. Two sources involved in the talks said that there's been progress, but there's a long way to go. Unnamed sources, of course. The rhetoric has still been hot, with Chuck U. Schumer sending a letter to his members this morning urging Republicans to take default off the table. And House Speaker McCarthy telling CNN on Thursday that the intensive staff meetings that have played out over the last 2 days, I don't think that they're that productive. What I truly believe here, looking at the actions of this president, he doesn't want to deal, he wants to default. No, he doesn't want to default. You're wrong on that, McCarthy. He doesn't want to default. But he's already got contingency plans in place to blame you if he defaults. There's still so much work ahead, and members who are on the sidelines of these now tightly held negotiations are placing a lot of faith in their respective leadership to cut a deal at a scale that McCarthy and Biden have never done together before. But behind the scenes, there are finally talks after months of no communication over the issue. It's important not to lose sight of the fact that it, in and of itself, is a major shift. Progress is slow. That's the reality. Behind the scenes, the negotiations between staff have been productive, respectful, and in good faith, according to the people on both sides. Those are all words that bode well for the direction this is going. What staffers didn't want to happen was a repeat of Tuesday, a high-stakes meeting followed by dueling press conferences where everyone argued there hadn't been much progress. In a press briefing Friday, the White House press secretary, token diversity hire, also said staff-level talks would only continue over the weekend. She did not have an update on timing for the next principals meeting, only saying it would be early next week. It's just not productive for the principals to relitigate their talking points at the Oval Office, and staff had not gotten themselves to a place yet where there was enough for Biden and McCarthy to actually negotiate on. McCarthy told CNN on Thursday that the White House didn't cancel the meeting. All the leaders decided it's probably in the best interest to let the staff meet again before we get back together. Would we actually see something like this pull off? Could we see Schumer and Biden cave? I don't think it's a likely possibility, but I think it's greater than 0% chance. Maybe. NPC News. Biden and McCarthy spoke by phone ahead of debt ceiling meeting. From Garrett Hockey, Kristen Welker, and Monica Elba. Speaker McCarthy spoke by phone with President Brandon on Sunday night ahead of the debt limit negotiations this past Tuesday, according to two sources familiar with a previously unreported discussion. The conversation was initiated by McCarthy in hopes of improving the prospects of a deal, the sources told NPC News. Biden also spoke by phone over the past weekend with Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer and House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries, according to one source. A spokesperson for McCarthy confirmed the Sunday call took place, but declined to provide any additional detail on it. The White House declined to comment. The conversation came after more than 3 months without significant negotiations between the two men. About the looming deadline, Biden and McCarthy had little previous relationship, and the speaker had grown publicly frustrated by the president's unwillingness to meet and negotiate on the debt ceiling. Before Biden invited congressional leaders to the White House for the meeting on Tuesday, McCarthy and Biden had not held in-person talks for 97 days. During that time, Biden vowed not to engage in bipartisan negotiations until the Republican-led House approved its own debt limit plan, which passed on April 26th. Again, are we getting somewhere? Could this be I mean, it's still going to be last minute Hail Mary, but could this be not at the last second, maybe still within the last minute? Quick one from Reuters. Biden-McCarthy debt ceiling meeting postponed. Spending cuts on the table. A debt limit meeting between Biden and top lawmakers has been scheduled for Friday. Has been postponed and leaders agreed to meet early next week. A White House spokesperson said on Thursday. Aides from both sides have started to discuss ways to limit federal spending. As talks on raising the government's debt ceiling to avoid a catastrophic default creep forward, people familiar with the discussion said. Again, I would like to see us in a point where we don't have to raise the debt ceiling every so often, where we can actually start to go in the other direction and start to take it down. But getting spending cuts in exchange for a little bit more debt ceiling wiggle room is a step in that direction. It's a step in cutting the spending. Staff will continue working, and all the principals agreed to meet early next week, the spokesperson said. A little bit of reaction to the town hall the other night from the Hill. GOP senators disavow Trump on debt ceiling, signaling a growing rift. From Alexander Bolton. Oh, I hope we name names. Senate Republicans are disavowing former President Trump's call to let the federal government default on its debts, unless President Biden agrees to massive spending cuts, dismissing Trump's suggestion as something far too risky to seriously consider. The cold reception of Trump's bold statement is the latest sign of the widening rift between Trump and his party's Washington establishment. While Trump maintained strong influence in the House, where he helped Kevin McCarthy nail down enough votes to be elected Speaker, honk honk, it's a different story in the Senate. GOP senators largely ignored Trump's participation in a CNN town hall Wednesday and later dismissed the former president's claim that failing to raise the debt ceiling by next month's deadline might not be a big deal. I don't think anybody suggesting that we have to do a default is wise policy, wise strategy for the country, Murkowski said, adding that Trump certainly doesn't impact her views. She argued it would be more productive to encourage Biden and McCarthy to work together to reach a compromise rather than pushing a default as a viable option. It's not even close to right, by the way. Right now, the talks are going on with the top four and, of course, the White House. And now the staff's, what we want to do is encourage that every step of the way, she said. Senate Republican Whip John Thune said most people recognize we need to strike a deal here and predicted that Trump's impacts won't get much traction among GOP lawmakers. I don't think we want to go there with the potential consequences, he said, of a potential default. Asked about Trump's comments, John Cornyn, an advisor to the Senate GOP leadership team, said, "Nobody thinks default is a good idea. Nobody." Let's talk about what happened here and what could have been done with this. So what happened here was the GOP in the Senate told Biden, just hold on for a little bit longer and we will force the issue. We will force McCarthy to back down, is what these three senators that we just listened to, listen to quotes from, what these three senators said. Just hold out, we'll get you there. Just slow down on the spending. Slow down, Democrats. Not so fast. That's what this said. But as far as realistically, I don't agree either that the debt ceiling should be passed. I don't think that the default should happen. But if I were to stand at the negotiating table and say, we need to have spending cuts in order for me to come back and raise your debt ceiling, I would absolutely want Joe Biden and Senate Democrats to believe that I'm willing to do it, that I'm willing to burn it down. It was the same thing with foreign policy, and people make fun of the fact that, oh, Donald Trump, he was in the back pocket of Putin, and that's why Putin didn't attack, and he was in the back pocket of dictators and Kim Jong-un, and that's why Kim Jong-un stopped doing nuclear missiles. No, that's not why he did it at all. While I don't personally think that the Donald would have pushed the button preemptively, I can't be sure of that. And that missile would be going into a nation millions of miles or thousands of miles away. Not millions. Thousands of miles away. I can't be sure that he wouldn't have done that. Now imagine being a world leader and being in the same position. I don't think he'll push the button, but I can't be sure of that. I don't think that the Donald would let the country go into a debt default, but I can't be sure of that. And that is the position, by the way, that Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden need to be on. We need to have leadership, especially you guys in the GOP. You need to have leadership that understands how bad and catastrophic a debt ceiling default would be, so that they'll actually work to do it instead of just saying burn it down like I would. Because I would just go in there and say burn it the F down. But you on the GOP, you need leadership that understands the tremendous consequences of doing something like that. But to still be able to put on the face and say, I might actually still do it. Screw you. Come on, let's negotiate. You wouldn't want to see me when I'm mad. We'll grab one last one here from the Daily Wire. Extent to which government can be funded without debt ceiling is uncertain, agency warns. From Ben Ziesloft. The CBO warned on Friday that there exists considerable uncertainty with respect to government funds over the next several weeks, as leaders negotiate over a potential debt ceiling increase with the White House. The debt ceiling, a policy established by Congress that prevents the federal government from spending beyond a predetermined national debt limit of $31.4 trillion, surpassed the threshold earlier this year. Treasury Secretary Yellen warned last week that the nation could face a default as soon as June 1st, unless the debt limit is suspended or increased. The CBO, a nonpartisan agency which provides lawmakers with budgetary and economic analyses, cautioned in a report that the extent to which the Treasury would be able to fund the government's ongoing operations will remain uncertain through May. The document added the extraordinary measures officials have used to fund operations over the past several weeks could expire at some point in the first 2 weeks of June. You know what would make me laugh just a little bit? If they were just a little bit off in the other direction. If the debt limit is not raised or suspended before the Treasury's cash and extraordinary measures are exhausted, the government will have to delay making payments for some activities, default on its debt obligations, or both, the report commented. Should remaining cash and extraordinary measures last until June 15th, on the other hand, the government may be able to fund operations through at least the end of July. As consumers and businesses pay expected quarterly taxes, certain large flows of cash into and out of the Treasury follow a regular schedule that directly affects the amount of debt subject to limit, the agency added. Treasury officials can, among other extraordinary measures, continue to pause investments into the Thrift Savings Plan and continue to suspend the issuance of new securities for the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund and the Postal Service Retiree Health Benefits Fund. Continued disagreement about the amendment to the debt limit between Democrats and Republican senators on whether the move will occur alongside broader spending reforms. Biden discussed mechanisms to increase the debt limit this week with House Speaker McCarthy, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, and Mitch McConnell. Biden, who has contended that Republicans are risking economic calamity by asking for spending reforms, said in remarks that he found the meeting to be productive, while McCarthy, who noted that Democrats waited more than 3 months to resume negotiations, launched earlier this year commented that he did not find progress in the discussions. So, this has been a wild ride, by the way, as to when this is actually going to happen. We start in September, then it goes into July, then it shifts back into May, then it goes out back to July, and then into September. And then once the tax receipt starts flowing in, then it draws back to June 1st. And now they're saying if we can push it, and we think we can, to June 15th, we can make it back to July. For the most part, it tells me they have no freaking clue, which is the government in general. All right, let's talk Jordan Neely. We're running out of time. That must be why I'm getting hungry. We have got one here from our friends over at NPR. Daniel Penny is charged with second-degree manslaughter in the death of Jordan Neely from Jacqueline Diaz. And remember, hit the donate button, because only by donating to NPR, who is only 10% government funded, can you learn the truth as to why a white-on-black crime is the end of the world. But black-on-white crime, it can be completely ignored. And in fact, we can give medals to black Marines who would do the same thing on the subway to a crazed white crack addict. Remember, it's only one way. And we must be anti-white. So, hit that donate button, because NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio. Let's see what it is that they have to say. Now, I have not spent a lot of time on this story. And that is one thing for me. In fact, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it now, honestly. Because everything about this was dressed up and pushed and force-fed to be a national narrative. This is a local news story. But it was pushed because of the color of the skin of both gentlemen who were involved directly, ignoring the people who were involved indirectly, to get people fighting with each other again. Which has been a big part of the Biden admin. There was parts of this in the Trump admin too. Not nearly as severely as the Biden admin has been doing it, but the entire goal has been to get people at each other's throats and constantly fighting, because when people fight, the uniparty wins. A people divided are easier to control. But a little bit on this one here. Daniel Penny, the 24-year-old man who put Jordan Neely in a fatal chokehold, submission hold, not a chokehold, on the New York City subway more than a week ago, was arraigned and criminally charged in a Manhattan court on Friday. Penny, a former U.S. Marine who was white, is facing a felony charge of second-degree manslaughter for the death of Neely, a 30-year-old black man who was homeless. The charge carries a maximum sentence of 15 years, which he is probably going to get, by the way. Penny did not enter a plea and was released after posting the $100,000 bail, which was excessive, by the way. First offender, Marine, can't be allowed to go AWOL. That's an excessive bail. He was ordered to surrender his passport within 48 hours and not leave the state of New York. His next court date is July 17th. Neely's death has raised questions about race, justice, homelessness, and mental health in America, mostly spurred on by the people of NPR. That is an excessive bail for this. Protests have erupted since his death on May 1st, with many calling for more resources for mental health care and to fight the city's homelessness problem. They have similarly pressed the city's leaders and DA Bragg to bring criminal charges against Penny sooner. Some thought his office was taking too long to file the charges against Penny. And this, by the way, is going down a very dangerous path that these people need to think through a lot harder. We're coming onto a path where people can be tried by social media before going into the court system. There was no reason to bring a charge. Put an investigation into it, absolutely. Go back, have the forensics team go through there, look at the hold, see that it was a blood hold, not an air restriction hold, a sleeper hold essentially. But because of pressure mounting from social media, Alvin Bragg had to act to save face. Otherwise, those protests about Trump that he would have been worried about, those would have been turned against him, and they would have been coming from his left and not his right. And I'm going to say right now, number one, don't go to New York City. First and foremost, do not go to New York City for any reason whatsoever. I'm sorry, Fanning, but I will never be seeing your little brownstone over there. Do not go to New York City for any reason anymore. And if you do, head down. No matter what the case is, head down. Don't be a hero. You know what happens to heroes in New York City? But the charges are brought after weeks of pressure from social media to make a charge brought. That scares me a little bit that this kind of pressure can do this. Some attorneys pushing back on the charges and the lack thereof. Attorneys for Jordan Neely's family say that Daniel Penny should be charged with murder, not manslaughter. In fact, the fact that he was charged with manslaughter suggests that even Alvin Bragg understands that this was not an intentional killing. Attorneys for Neely's family said Friday that Penny should face more serious charges after the 24-year-old Marine was arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter. Neely's father and aunt stood silently among their lawyers, who said Neely had a support system but battled demons and untreated mental health issues. The attorneys vowed to pursue more serious charges against Penny, who was seen on video holding Neely in a chokehold following an altercation on the subway. Justice looks like conviction for murder, said Lennon Edwards, Esquire, an attorney with Mills and Edwards. Edwards believed Neely's family was closer to justice Friday than they were a week ago, but he's unsatisfied with Penny's manslaughter charge. Where's Crump? Because I know he's going to make an appearance in this article. I almost want to hit the search function, the webpage search, and put Crump into there. No Ben Crump this time. I'm surprised. The consequences of manslaughter is 2 to 5. Manslaughter 2 is 5 to 15. Ask yourself, is that enough? Murder 2 up to 25 to life. So we need a full cup of justice here, said Edwards. That is a retribution charge, not a justice charge. I'm telling you that right now. That is a retribution reach. Alright. Let's do one more here, and then I think we are going to call it for the night. We spent a lot of time on immigration. From the Hill, our Twitter news for the day. Musk says he's hired a new Twitter CEO to replace him. From Jared Gons. This is from yesterday. CEO Elon Musk says he has hired a new chief executive to replace him overseeing the social media platform, months after he initially said he would step down from the role. Musk tweeted Thursday that he has hired a new CEO for Twitter, who will start in about 6 weeks. At the time of this article, he did not name who he chose, but indicated the new CEO is female. He said his role at Twitter will transition to servicing as executive chair and chief technology officer to oversee product, software, and system operations. Musk agreed to step down from his position as CEO after a majority, 57.5%, voted in a Twitter poll he posted in December that he should resign. He said in that post he would abide by the results of the poll. I will resign as CEO as soon as I find someone foolish enough to take the job. After that, I will just run the software and service team. He tweeted after the poll's 12-hour window had closed. And who is this mysterious heroine who will set the leftoidism back to Twitter? Fox News reports Elon Musk names Linda Yaccarino as Twitter CEO. From Daniela Genovese. Longtime NBC Universal advertising executive Linda Yaccarino will replace Elon Musk as Twitter's top boss. Well, I'm excited to welcome Linda Yaccarino as the new CEO of Twitter. Linda Yac will focus primarily on business operations while I focus on product design and new technology. Looking forward to working with Linda to transform this platform into X, the Everything app. Musk, who's been in charge of Twitter since buying the platform in October for $44 billion, says that Yaccarino will focus primarily on business operations while he turns his attention to product design and new technology. Together, Musk and Yaccarino will work on transforming the platform into X, the Everything app, he added. Musk recently changed the name of Twitter Incorporated to X Corp. Yaccarino, who served as the global chair for advertising and partnerships at NBC, announced her resignation from NBC Universal on Friday morning. Yaccarino spent nearly 12 years heading the media giant's advertising and partnerships division. She was credited with helping launch its ad-supported streaming service Peacock and forging partnerships with companies like Apple, News, BuzzFeed, Holler, ReachTV, Snapchat, Twitter, and YouTube. Her sudden departure came a day after Musk said he hired a new female CEO for the social media platform. He did not name his successor at the time. But there's backlash from the Daily Wire. Musk draws backlash for picking World Economic Forum leader, supporter of content moderation, to run Twitter. From Ben Ziesloft. Elon Musk selected advertising executive Linda Yaccarino to replace him as chief executive officer of Twitter, drawing concerns as users on the platform notice her connections to the WEF and her endorsements of content moderation. Yaccarino, who departed from NBC Universal this week after serving as the company's chair of global advertising and partnerships for more than a decade, was confirmed as the new CEO of Twitter on Friday. Musk remarked that she would primarily focus on business operations, while he directs his attention towards product design and technology. Twitter users started to uncover the connections that Yaccarino holds to an entity such as the WEF, for which she chairs the Task Force on Future Work and sits on the Media, Entertainment, and Culture Industry Governors Steering Committee. That is a long title. The WEF is a leading proponent of stakeholder capitalism, an approach to investing that encourages executives to consider the needs of employees, communities, and other parties, in addition to shareholders, and the use of corporate power to advance political agendas. Musk himself criticized the WEF earlier this year for trying to be the boss of the entire planet, as business leaders and government officials gathered at the organization's annual summit in Switzerland. Yaccarino also served as the board chair for the Ad Council, an entity which creates public service announcements for nonprofits and governments. She partnered with the Biden admin to launch a campaign featuring Pope Francis in order to promote the Pinkpox vaccine. Musk insisted on Friday that Yaccarino would not institute the shadow bans which frequently targeted conservatives under the previous management of Twitter. The phrase "RIP Twitter" nevertheless trended on the platform after he officially announced her appointment to work as chief executive. So here we are. Now, as far as I go, whoever owns Twitter doesn't affect me in any way, shape, or form. I'll still use the platform, I'll still abide by the rules, even if I have to sidestep them in one way or another. This doesn't affect me in the least. And for the people, the conservatives who are coming out here saying, this is going to be a hellscape, and I'm leaving Twitter as soon as she comes on, and rip Twitter, and it's going to be... You sound just as bad as your friends on the left, who are no doubt cheering this, thinking the fact that they're going to come back into control. My question for the people who think that this is the end of the world, which if your entire world revolves around Twitter, get out and touch grass. But for the people who think that this is the end of the world, I ask you again, will you step up? Can you make a better social media platform? Can you make a better situation where you can reach people who you may not even be associated with, people that you don't know, but still reach out to new people? Forge connections the way that people have been able to do on Twitter. Advertise for business the way people have been able to do on Twitter. And have a public town square the way people have been able to do on Twitter, while simultaneously allowing people from opposite sides to be able to discuss. As bad as it got with the shadow banning under Jack and Parag, there were still people coming in from both sides to hash it out and have the discussions. The banning was going disproportionately in one direction, but it didn't stop people from seeking out and seeing the ideas and having the discussions. And, your Jersey My Wife's Son Reliant and your JoJo from Joyce's and Parnas and Koshiarella still were able to make fortunes off of their Twitter presence. It has been one of the best platforms for cross-talk. Cross-partisan talk. Of all its faults. And yes, some people are going to walk away because of this, just because of who this person is. Some people are going to get banned just because of who this person is. Some people are going to seek to get banned from martyrdom just because of who this person is. I'm willing to step up and see what she does. Some of her connections make me wary. But I won't judge her actions until she actually has actions to judge. And with that, let's throw up the Twitter trending, speaking of Twitter, and head out of here for the night. Partially because, well, I'm hungry. On the trending. Oh, we even got a little behind the scenes look there. Alright, let's look at what's trending. Number one trending, as it usually is at this time, is WWE SmackDown. These old heads are cooking, says Sky Blonded. Which, by the way, I can't play the video clips with audio as much as I'd like to anymore because I keep getting copyright popped for this. Blocked in like every country. That looks like it sucked. But look at him go. Oof. It still, by the way, surprises me completely that WWE, especially SmackDown, which was the brand when I was in high school 20 years ago, is still a thing. And the feats, and again, we all know this is staged. But even still staged, the feats that these people, these professional stuntmen are able to do are pretty incredible. But yeah, they're not actually fighting. They're not actually mad at each other. It's just about the same way as politics are at this point. Our number two trend for the day. Dat Boy Token. Karina Jelinek says, this one is different. It's legit old meme. No brother and sister of Pepe. This seems like it's going to blow up. Keep an eye on it. Am I wrong? You're probably wrong. So we've got a non-fungible token that's going around. I don't understand non-fungible tokens. But I know that they made an appearance for about 5 seconds and then they disappeared. And there's still a bunch of people who seem to think that they can do stuff with them. They still pop up every once in a while, but just this isn't what's going to make people rich. As far as I can tell, this is not official financial advice. If you think you can do well with an NFT, have at it. I don't think I can. Although that's an interesting key lime pie. Third trend today, Brunson in the NBA. Brunson Muse says this is the call that gives Jalen Brunson his third foul. I don't know who Jalen Brunson is. But it looks like he saw himself about to do something that would have been a foul and tried to back himself off right away. I didn't do it. It wasn't me. Jalen Brunson gets his rest for the first time since Game 4. But he did have a hot start. 15 points, 5 to 7 field goals, 3 to 5 3-point field goals. Obviously a talented player, but I don't know enough about basketball to go in with any of the rest of the drama. On the NFL side, Darius Smith is trending. The full trade per league source. The Browns get Zadarius Smith, a 2025 6th round pick and a 2025 7th round pick, and the Vikings get a 5th round pick in 24 and a 5th round pick in 25. Because the Vikings are trading 3-time Pro Bowl pass rusher Zadarius Smith to the Browns. Have the Browns ever had a winning season? I'm not throwing shade when I ask this. I can't remember. Like, I think back to... I started paying attention to football in about the 5th grade. And I think back to... That was in 94. So 30 years ago. In 30 years, I cannot remember the Browns ever having a winning season. Did they do well before, by the way? And I don't even know the question or the answer to that. But Zadarius Smith, enjoy Cleveland. Unfortunately, it's in a state that doesn't exist, so I don't know where you're actually going to land, but enjoy Cleveland. And the last one that we have on the trend is hashtag WakeUp7. Rocky says, bought it, hashtag WakeUp7. Wake up, and it's Joe Ever, Lovejoy. When you're totally at the Lovejoy show in 96 Fahrenheit weather and Wilbur goes backstage, hashtag WakeUp7. We get a WO and IO on iTunes. Hello Will, hashtag WakeUp7. I am really out of touch on pop culture. Because I don't know who Lovejoy is. I don't know what WakeUp7 is. It appears to have something to do with Apple Music, which I also don't have. So this may be why I don't understand, but it may also be because it's pop music. And the only pop star that I really... The only two pop stars I really know of are Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift that are current. And I wouldn't be surprised to find out that Lady Gaga isn't current anymore. Taylor Swift is, I know, because she's still touring. I guess I really am out of touch. But hey, the Twitter trending has let me to at least start seeing some of this stuff again. And with that, our top 5 trends. And we're done. Quiet crowd tonight, but you guys were still here, and I was glad to see you guys. I can see who, how many people are watching. I can't always see who is watching, but I can see how many people are watching. We had a good few people file in and out of here tonight, so giggity. It was a good time. Let's throw the outro music up. It's dinner time. I'm hungry. You guys probably have weekend fun stuff to do. I have to work tomorrow, so I don't have weekend fun stuff to do, but you guys probably do. Maybe you'll play some bags. Maybe you'll drink some beers. Some of you might be on a date. I hope that you're watching Contemporary on a date. Trust me, it gets her excited. This here, That does it for her. I promise. All right. Let's throw the outro up and head out of here for the day. Whew. Well, great week. It's been a bit of an exhausting week for me, but some of that stuff comes out of my personal life that you guys don't know about. But with that, we will be back here tomorrow. No, we won't be back here tomorrow because I have to work tomorrow. We'll be back here on Monday for more news, more headlines, more contemporary. We'll see what happens over the weekend. We will see if Neely's killer comes to justice. No, he's not going back to court until the 17th. We will see if the debt ceiling gets solved. No, that's not going to happen. We'll see if the border is overrun. I'm sure we'll see some stories about that. But with that, have fun, take care, have a fantastic weekend. Go drink some beers, go have some fun. Go spend some time with your family. Go spend some time with your friends. It's getting warm up here in Wisconsin, so I hope it's getting warm where you are too. And I hope that you guys do get out there, enjoy the sun. It's going to rain here all weekend, unfortunately, but you are not here, you are there, so enjoy what you have over there, and we will see you here on Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time, for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until Monday, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.